We've got a very interesting piece of news to take a look at here today involving the New York Rangers and them possibly being the favorite by a very reputable and I would say very smart hockey mind in Brian Hayes of TSN. Some of you, obviously Americans, I'm Canadian, some of you might not know exactly who that is, but he is on TSN, which is one of the bigger, sports networks in Canada. TSN and Sports, and those are the two big ones. And he's on TSN there, and he ended up pretty much coming out there and saying that he thinks and he believes the New York Rangers are the favorites to take down and kind of, beat out the Florida Panthers in the Eastern Conference this upcoming season. So we're going to take a look at that kind of piece of news there and talk about whether or not the Rangers actually have a good enough team to possibly end up kind of getting some revenge on the Florida Panthers, ended up taking them down this upcoming season, possibly ended up going all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals for the first time in quite a while. And just to give you a little background on Brian Hayes, he is a former OHL and junior A hockey player in Canada. Junior A is kind of the step below the OHL, so played some junior hockey there in Canada, ended up joining TSN and started a show called Overdrive, where he is an analyst and host on there, alongside, for the most part, two pretty long-term and long-time NHLers in Jeff O'Neill and Jamie McLennan. So pretty reputable guys on that show there. They do it obviously in Canada, so some of you are probably, honestly, most of you probably have never even heard of this show possibly, but it's a pretty good show here in Canada. I'm Canadian. I'm a Rangers fan, but I do watch that show quite a bit there because they talk about all things sports, but also kind of mainly focus on hockey. But he ended up coming out here, Brian Hayes, the host of the Overdrive show on TSN there. And like I said, he kind of talked about the Rangers possibly being the actual kind of favorites to kind of dethrone and take down the former Stanley Cup champions in the Florida Panthers, as well as the kind of Eastern Conference champions as well. So let's take a look here at the quote from Sports Illustrated article here, kind of talking about what Brian Hayes said. So, quote, Brian Hayes, analyst and host of TSN's Overdrive, the show, joined TSN Network, which he does quite a bit, to discuss several hot topics in the NHL. One of them was the state of the Eastern Conference. The reigning champions are once again the favorites to rule the East, but Hayes believes the Rangers are the biggest threat to the Panthers heading into 2024. And I would probably agree with that. I think this Eastern Conference has a lot of great teams for sure, but the Rangers obviously making their second of the past 3 seasons going to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think it says a lot about this team. Maybe this team isn't good enough. Maybe it is good enough to actually get over that hump there and make the Stanley Cup Finals. But I think it's pretty clear that the Rangers are still going to be one of the top teams in the entire Eastern Conference Finals. I think it is very fair to say they're the biggest threat to actually potentially take down the former Stanley Cup champion, the reigning Stanley Cup champions in the Florida Panthers there. Going to Game 6 there, the Rangers played some pretty good hockey. Obviously didn't dominate that series, and you could argue at moments definitely got dominated by the Panthers, but the Rangers still put up a pretty good fight there. Going to Game 6, the series wasn't a complete blowout by any means. Going to Game 6 there, put up a good fight. Did kind of the same thing there back a couple of seasons ago when they went all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals like they did before against Tampa Bay Lightning. They're losing Game 6 as well. So going to 2 of the last 3 Eastern Conference Finals is definitely kind of says something about this team. This core of players is good. Is it amazing? Is it elite? Maybe you don't want to say that, but this core of players is still very good. We have a truly elite and top-tier goaltender in Igor Shesterkin who really kind of shines come playoff time. So I think this core of players has enough talent and kind of enough juice there to probably get over the hump there, but can they actually do it? That is the big question. And now taking a look here at a direct quote here from Brian Hayes, he ended up saying, quote, the Rangers have a ton of talent and a ton of depth. They have a good fusion up front of veterans like Zibanejad and Panarin and younger players. Philip Hedl is a really good player who was hurt a lot last year. They have a great top 4 defense, and on any given night, Igor Shesterkin can be the best goaltender in the world, which I definitely agree with. Zibanejad and obviously Panarin are guys who need to kind of maybe take a step up in the playoffs especially. They're really good for the most part in the regular season, especially a guy like Panarin, but sometimes guys like Zibanejad, Panarin, you could even argue Kreider at moments, although Kreider definitely had a big game there in Game 6 of the second round there against the Canes. At moments, some of these more veteran forwards, I'm not going to count a guy like Trocheck, that's for sure, because he was absolutely phenomenal, but some of these guys go a little quiet when it matters most in the playoffs there, especially kind of the forward side of things there, some of these guys. So hopefully they can always take those big steps up when it comes to the playoffs. They really kind of produce offensively like they do at moments in the regular season, especially a guy like Panarin who Obviously, he's a phenomenal player in the regular season there. Doesn't quite perform at that level in the playoffs, so hopefully he can do that this upcoming playoff run. Potentially, guy like Keto there, if he's fully healthy, he can definitely make a good impact on this team and possibly end up taking an even bigger step forward. Obviously, he missed a lot of time last year, but he's still a very good and young player, can still definitely get better. We have a pretty solid defense core, and we do arguably have the best goaltender in the world, especially once it comes to playoff time, which I definitely say would be the best goaltender in the world in Igor Shesterkin. So overall, this team is loaded with talent there, but can they actually knock off the reigning Stanley Cup champions, the Florida Panthers? That's the question I'm going to answer next. I think this Florida Panthers team is going to be one of the best teams in the entire NHL once again, and definitely will be right up there at the top of the Eastern Conference once again, like they were this past season, and very well could end up going on another long playoff run like they did last season, because they have most of their core players and really overall players kind of coming back. Some of their depth guys are losing a couple of them, but nothing too big there. A guy like Brandon Montour, arguably their best defenseman, he is gone now, but I think other than that, though, they have pretty much their entire team coming back, especially the main, important players, which is a good sign for them. They're losing a pretty key player in Montour, though, for sure. He's definitely one of their better players. Like I said, arguably their best defenseman, but they still should be fine. They have a lot of, great high-end talent while also having that great depth as well. So having all that, they're having Bobrovsky and Net, who at moments can be, one of the better goaltenders in the league. I think that does a lot of good for them. And like I said, they still should be one of the best teams in the entire NHL once again. The Rangers made some good moves there, and I do think that if you compare it to going into last season back in 2023, 2024, going into that season as well as kind of after the trade deadline there, going into the playoffs there with that roster that we had, I do think as of right now, this team on paper at least is looking like a better squad. Especially if some of the young guys like, a Brennan Hoffman, and Adam Edstrom, possibly Brett Berard, and Matthew Robertson, if some of these young guys / rookies, when they get their chance, which like Hoffman, it definitely seems like he very well could make the open net roster. If some of these guys can kind of take a big step in their overall kind of development and really have a big impact on this team, having some of these young, prospects / rookies definitely will go a long way for this team. We already know that we're going to have a guy like Will Coley there who's going into the second season there. Hopefully he can take a step up offensively, and if he can do that, that would be fantastic. We know he brings that physicality and solid defensive play, but I think bringing that overall offensive game up another level, that could do wonders for this team. Lafreniere is a guy who could take another step forward possibly. Kakko could possibly get back towards that kind of 40, maybe 50-point kind of season. That would be great to see. So there are a lot of variables to this team, a lot of young players on this squad, and if they can take a big step up in their own development, but also having guys like, Panarin kind of maintain his game, what we saw last regular season, and guys like Zibanejad kind of get back to his normal form, Kreider take a bit of a step up possibly, guy like Trocheck kind of maintain that, this team can definitely go a very long way, and definitely could, and I think has a pretty good chance, not a great one to actually kind of overtake the Panthers, but definitely have a good chance to be arguably the favorite going into this upcoming season to truly take down the Florida Panthers, who are still going to be a great team. The Rangers should be right up there next to them, alongside many other teams like, possibly like the Leafs, obviously the Canes. The Devils could be great as well. Boston could be pretty good again, although they're getting older with their core. They still have a pretty great team there, so they could kind of take a big step up there. Tampa could kind of get back into form possibly. So there are a lot of great teams there in the Eastern Conference, and the Rangers will definitely be one of the top teams. I think as of right now, this New York Rangers team is probably good enough to take down a team like the Florida Panthers there in a playoff series. I think they're good enough. They have that kind of talent. Do they actually do it? That's the question. But also, can they add in one more kind of star level player possibly at this year's NHL trade deadline to really kind of strengthen up this team and really kind of possibly put them over the hump there to potentially win a Stanley Cup or at least make the Cup final there and possibly take down a team like the Panthers, which I think adding in one more kind of star level player, especially in the forward side of things there, could really help this team go a long way in the playoffs. Anyways, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, definitely hit that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content. I'll be posting daily once again as we get a little closer to the upcoming season here, like I did for the entire season of 2023-2024. I've been posting daily for over a year on this Rangers channel. So if you're a Rangers fan, definitely hit that like and subscribe button for a ton more New York Rangers content. And also don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on the Rangers possibly being the favorites to take down the reigning Stanley Cup and Eastern Conference champions, the Florida Panthers.